Welcome, everyone. We really appreciate your time to share some interesting presentations tonight. And I just have a few announcements that I wanted to make before we get on with our show. I wanted to mention that we have appointed all our board members, as well as just reiterate what our elected board members are. And sorry about that. Got a phone call. I should have put that on mute. Sorry about that. So I'm president. Vice president is Tony Taylor. Treasurer, Cecile Hemes. And secretary is Clarissa Yablinsky. Our appointed board members for 2022 our program coordinator, Rod McCready and Juliana Fessenden. Trip coordinator and publicity is Bill Podorski. Equipment manager is Kai Davis. Membership is Sylvie Adam. And our webmaster is Zach Baker. So I wanted to just give my thanks to all the people who have volunteered to be on the board for 2022 and to help our board do amazing things. You know, we have a lot of talent within all our board members, and I really appreciate what everybody has done to keep this club functioning and going strong even through 2020 and till 2022. So thanks again to everybody. Next slide. We do have some club business for tonight. We had our board meeting this past month, and we would like to propose that all our board members, the ones that are appointed and elected, should have the ability to vote on any of the issues that come up throughout the year for a vote. Currently, our bylaws do not permit that, and it talks about basically, you know, limiting it to you know, a few appointed officers. I think it basically says 4 officers. I have the language shown on the screen. You can see that the actual language is in section 2. The elected officers, together with the past president, may appoint additional members to the board by unanimous vote. Appointed officers may include, but are not limited to, membership coordinator, trip coordinator, equipment manager, webmaster. What we want to add is all appointed officers are voting members. In section 3 about the board, it says the board is composed of elected officers, past president, and appointed officers. The board shall meet monthly prior to the general meeting and shall establish the policies required for the governance of the club and shall make the decisions assigned to the board by this document. A majority of officers elected and appointed present at a board meeting constitutes a quorum for the conduct of board business. So for our poll tonight, what we would like to do is anybody who is a current member of the Los Alamos Mountaineers Club to vote regarding changing the language so that we can include all board members as voting members, which includes appointed members instead of the current clause that limits voting members to 4 appointees as selected by the board. So after we take our poll tonight, we need to get a majority vote to be able to proceed to the next step. And then what we will do is we will send out an email, and everybody within the club will have an opportunity to vote. And we must get a 2/3 majority to be able to modify our bylaws. So we appreciate your help with at least the first step for tonight.
Okay, so that Zoom poll is live. Please just click yes or no if you are a Mountaineers member, and we'll give everyone a minute to make that click and then share the poll results. And Melanie, we have a request for just a clarification of why the change is needed.
The reason why we believe the change is needed is because we feel that all the people who are appointed to the board have valuable input and should be able to cast a vote regarding any important issue. Because we discuss issues that are involving different types of subject matter that each of the appointees are involved in. Like, for example, if the equipment manager is not able to vote, but we are discussing a decision about equipment management or equipment, then it seems like we should include the equipment manager in that vote. So that's just one example, but we discuss a variety of subjects that cover all the different areas where our appointed members or our appointed board members contribute.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. And just as if we were in the same room and everybody would be able to see hands up, we have 18 out of 20 voting yes and 2 out of 20 voting no. So Clarissa or Melanie, if you need to take note of those numbers. And then
yes.
I can, yeah.
So this basically allows us to move on to the next step, which would be a notification by email to all the club members for a vote, an official vote to change the bylaw.
Okay.
So thank you, everybody, for your input in our poll tonight. Okay, the next thing that I'd like to mention, if you could turn the slide back, Beth, is there was another change that the board discussed recently, and it involves the way that we are supporting our club trips. So basically, the Los Alamos Mountaineers would like to purchase community gear for some of the popular club activities by having people who are in the club membership propose to the board, types of community gear that the club might want to provide. The reason why we believe that this is important is we have had some club trips where, we're relying on personal member gear, such as ropes. And we believe that it would probably be better and, probably decrease liability and potential risk if we had our equipment manager involved in doing an inspection of these different materials, supplies, gear that is loaned out for trips, so that we know that we have something that's operable and safe for a club trip. And it takes the burden off of the people in the club who are providing their personal gear. And frankly, we don't know how that gear is being stored, how long, the age of the equipment or the, ropes, etc. So, we feel that this way we could at least keep track of that better if we had community club gear. So one of the caveats to this is that we would like to make sure that the gear that the club purchases is used for club advertised trips. So if you're a club member and you want to borrow community gear, this does not serve the club as well as if it was for a club trip, an advertised club trip. So if there is any kind of concern about that, and we certainly would like to hear from you to discuss, why any club member believes that this is something that we don't want to do. But right now, we definitely believe that we need to purchase more community gear to support the activities that we are wanting to do. And we're hoping that that will encourage more trip leaders to lead club trips, because we, will then be able to borrow club gear instead of personal gear. So just wanted to mention, one of the major changes that we have made in our first meeting for our 2022 board. Do you want to move on to the next slide, Beth?
So Melanie, I didn't know if you wanted to take any comments or questions from the chat. There was just one from France, and then I put in there the link to the board email list. If anybody else has any more questions, would you prefer that France Cordova emails those to you, or?
I believe that would be best, just because we could end up expending a little more time on this subject and lose time on our presentations. So I want to try to allow all our presenters to have maximum time for their presentations tonight. So
of course, yeah.
Please, if you have questions or concerns, please email or call the board, and we'd be happy to discuss some of your concerns, and we can bring that up at the next board meeting.
Okay, and also Francis' question did go to everyone, so maybe there's another person on the board that can answer that in the chat, so that everybody can see the answer. I'll leave the chat open if anybody can answer that for her there. But you can use that link to access the rest of the Mountaineers board email.
Thank you. Okay, so some other things that I wanted to mention is that we have some club member interviews completed. So we hope to send out some announcements soon for those. But, at the top of the page, basically, we're talking about that we are going into our 70th anniversary for the Los Alamos Mountaineers. And this is exciting. We've made it 70 years. So I'd really appreciate anybody who wants to volunteer for any particular activity to celebrate the longevity of this club, and that we've made it 70 years. And any other ideas, please send them to the board so that we can discuss it within the board and see what we can come up with to have some fun activities, and possibly some swag for the 70th anniversary. So congratulations to all of us. We made it 70 years. Next slide. Okay, so tonight we have 4 mini presentations. Rod will end up introducing those presentations, but I also just wanted to take an opportunity to just wish you a happy and safe holiday season. And I look forward to seeing you in 2022. Thanks again, and please feel free to call us. Let us know what's on your mind. How can the board better help this club? Thanks again.
The first speaker tonight is Deirdre Monroe. You might recognize her name because she spoke about 3 years to the club on a similar topic, but not the same topic. And I was super impressed back then by her level of enthusiasm and just how much effort she puts into this. So I'm looking forward to hearing from her on the backcountry horseman activities. Take it away, Deirdre.
Okay, I'm unmuting and I'm starting my video. Okay, is that working?
Yes.
Okay, hi, everybody. Yes, Rod is right. About 2018, I presented a talk on the San Pedro Parks Wilderness. At that point, we had a group of people, multiple users, actually remapping all of the trails in the wilderness. And this was needed because it was basically just a good place to get lost. So at this point, we have the trails mapped. The Forest Service has put out a new wilderness map. This is actually accurate. And we're in another phase of the work in San Pedro. So I want to talk this time about trail clearing in 2022. And as you can see, I'm saying BCH needs volunteers. Well, who's BCH? They're backcountry horsemen, and they do a tremendous amount of work across the country to clear and maintain trails. So let's see, can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, little locator. You can see Los Alamos. San Pedro Parks is basically west and north of the Valles Caldera. So you can get to it a couple of different ways. One, you can drive past the Valla and go up to the southern point, or you can go around Abiquiu Lake and come in by the Gallina side. Okay, next, please. So why do I get excited about this place? Well, it is a heck of a beautiful place to go hike, ride, backpack, ski, all of those different things. And it is the location of the Continental Divide Trail, which has actually been relocated the last year or so, but it is gorgeous. Now let's see, let's go to the next slide, please. We have a little bit of a challenge. If I were a marketing person, I would say it's an opportunity. But basically, especially in the northeast corner, we have a lot of beetle kill trees, and they blow down every year. So every year, the trail clearing needs to be done. And since this is wilderness, it can only be done with hand tools. So you'll see people in the upper left, those are our backcountry horsemen people, and they carry these big saws and other tools in on generally mules, by pack, and then work during the day, as you can see in the bottom slide, clearing the trail. So what needs to be cleared varies a lot in size. These are pretty big trees, but it just varies a lot. So we have a need, and as I'm going to describe, we do have an opportunity for people who are not horse folks. You do not need an animal because the backcountry horseman we are looking for volunteers to hike in. We will carry tools. If it's appropriate to camp, we'll haul in camping gear, supervise the work during the day with accredited sawyers, and then haul things out. So it's a wonderful way to get introduced to an area that a lot of people don't know very well, especially in the Northeast. Okay, next slide. Okay, I've already talked about this. It's a simple formula. You hike, we pack in tools. Now, if I, as a backpacker, had ever had an opportunity like this for somebody else to pack in my stuff, I would have been in heaven. And that's what we can do. And by the way, the Backcountry Horsemen, a fairly small group of people, a number of chapters in New Mexico, but there's an awful lot of gray hair. So we need some people with strong backs. We pack in tools, we all work, we go back to where we're camping, and we eat and sleep and have fun. And depending on the length of the trip, we go back the next day. So there's plenty of time to go in, do work, and then if you want to stay on your own, there are lovely places to camp. particularly at the Resumadero campground, which even has a stream running through it and vaulted toilets, or at like the Cecilia Creek trailhead. But yeah, bottom line, this is an important job. It's being done by a small group of people who really need some help now, and we would appreciate anybody who wants to volunteer. I will end by saying that our spring and summer 2022 schedule has not been set yet, but I can provide that, and there will be a number of trips. So I'll provide that to folks in the Mountaineers Club. And next slide, please. You can contact me or Dan Key, who is president of the Backcountry Horsemen's Hay Mist chapter. I hope this resonates with you. I hope to see you next spring and summer. And that is the end of my talk.
Thank you so much, Deirdre. And I don't see any questions yet in the chat. I know these are quick presentations, but if anybody has any questions for Deirdre, go ahead and type them in.
And I think I did this in about 6 minutes.
That was very quick. Yes, yes, we have plenty of time for any questions. And also, if you think of any questions in the next couple talks, we can always bring everybody back on at the very end once we're finished. So maybe, Rod, if we just want to move on to Nathan, and Deirdre will come back to you if any questions come up.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Oh, sorry. You know what, Rod? I took you off the co-host again. Give me 1 second. All right, there you should be able to unmute.
Okay, actually, I had a question for Deirdre, if you don't mind.
Not at all.
You mentioned the Sawyer certification. Is it the same certification that we need for operating chainsaws?
And Deirdre, you should see a little
Yes,
unmute.
I'm unmuting. Rod, I don't know if it's the same as chainsaws. I would have to check on that with the Forest Service.
Okay, I'll check with them. I thought you might know if it was, because you kind of have to go out and use chainsaws with.
Yeah, now I will say that there are parts of the San Pedro that are just forest, not wilderness. So, you know, chainsaws can be used there, and certification would be great.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Okay, for the next talk, we have Nathan Burnside. He is somebody that I'm not sure I have met personally, but I see a lot of his activities by virtue of the fact that I'm on a few Facebook groups that he's also on. And he's often posting pretty big trips on his bicycle, which interests me a lot. And his talk tonight is on one such trip. So Nathan, if you're ready, why don't you take it away?
Okay, thank you. Share my screen here. Okay, thanks for the introduction. I'm Nathan Burnside, and I just wanted to mention and give a shout out to Deirdre. I have the pleasure of working with Deirdre for quite a few years now, and she is always an advocate for procuring, collecting, and disseminating information about important things, whether it be at work or in this case on outdoors kind of issues. And she's also the author of a map of the Caja del Rio that you probably may have come across. Anyway, she's a great person to follow in my presentation here. So I'm going to present about bikepacking, specifically on the New Mexico off-road runner. I've spent this past summer bikepacking with my son quite a bit throughout northern New Mexico here in the Jemez Mountains, which is a perfect place to do it. And if you're ever out there on the Valles Caldera, you'll often see people riding by on bikes with big bags strapped to their bikes, and they're usually bike packers. And at the end of summer, my son, who goes to school down in Las Cruces, decided that he was going to ride his bike back to school in Las Cruces, starting in Santa Fe. And he did that along this route, again, called the New Mexico Off-Road Runner. And after he did that and sent back photos, and I decided that I needed to try to do it, although I didn't have the 9 days contiguous that he had to go ride them. I had to split it up. And so this is a report on that effort. I split the trip up into 3 weekends, of which 2 I've completed so far. Let's see. Bikepacking. I've mentioned it a couple of times now. If you're familiar with it, bikepacking is briefly, it's the off-road version of bike touring. Generally, instead of heavily laden bikes with panniers that were common in the past and all on pavement, bikepacking would be done on probably on a mountain bike or on a gravel bike, usually with lighter equipment. You might still use panniers, although different kinds of bags are preferred. There are a few websites out there, but mainly bikepacking.com has documented, I'd say, hundreds of routes, very well documented, and documented a lot of the gear that you would need to participate in bikepacking. So if you're interested, go check it out. This particular route starts in Santa Fe and goes down to Las Cruces, as I mentioned, and it's approximately 65% off-road. You can see the stats in the little window there. I think there's a total of about 23,000 feet of climbing. So there's over the space of those almost 500 miles, there's a fair bit of climbing. I'd say overall, the route is fairly benign. There aren't many really tough climbs, but I'll talk about some of those. My first day, I had a goal to get all the way to Moriarty from Santa Fe. And the reason for that is that I wanted to be able to stay in a hotel or a little motel. When you're out bikepacking, you know, it's fun to stay in a tent, it's fun to camp out, but even the most humble of motels can be quite glorious when you're out on the road. So that was my goal. So I had to put in a long day. I started in El Dorado, and like 75 miles that day. You go out through past Roe Mesa and along the Glorieta Mesa, and then you drop down into the Estancia Basin, which is just this enormous basin that extends all the way down to the southern tip of the Monsanto Mountains. So that was a 75-mile day with a fair bit of climbing. I didn't roll into Moriarty until just the very end of the day. A few photos from this day. Yeah, there were a lot of grasslands. Thankfully, this is right at the end of monsoon season, so all the stock ponds that you would normally see dry here in New Mexico were full of water and teeming with life. There was all these grasshoppers just covered, when there was pavement, they were just covering the pavement, and it must have been mating season. And this is a typical bikepacking setup. This is my setup, of course. And you've got a triangle bag here and a front roll and a seat bag. And anyway, that's the basic setup that most people would use. I said I made it to Moriarty by sundown. This is actually sunrise the next morning as I was headed over to Blake's Lotaburger to get a breakfast burrito before rolling out. Which was another reason I wanted to stay in Moriarty for the night. So day two, I headed out on a part of the route that is called the Salt Missions Trail. So you go south of Moriarty, and eventually you get over to these towns like Chilili, Escobosa, and Tajique, and Monsanto, and these little towns are all along this trail that was part of the salt trade. It had to do again with this Estancia Basin, all the water in this ancient lake collected down into a few salt ponds. It carried all the minerals, and so there's traditionally there were some salt ponds right at the low point, and there were these very early on in the 1600s there were missions, there were trade routes that would go and collect the salt, and that was a lot of these little towns date back to that time. And as you'll see, my bike leaning up against this mural, there are all these old churches that you ride past. And also one of the things you do in bikepacking is take pictures of your bike leaning against stuff. So there will be a few more pictures of murals. There was a long stretch of pavement in this section, unfortunately, and there was some fast-moving traffic. It reminded me that I probably should have had a tail lamp for this section. Also, I think this is my biggest day of climbing in the whole trip. There were about 5,000 feet of climbing. And I do want to say that, I was in a hurry to try to get this done, in a few weekends. And so I was really limited on time. There's no reason really to travel very quickly. You can break it up into much smaller sections. And all of the riding is pretty easygoing. The end of the day is a climb into the Monsanto Mountains. A few more pictures from the trail here from day 2. There's the Lotta Burger down there in Moriarty. Another one of these churches that you would ride past. I think this one was in Tahike. This is outside of a little store called the 10 cent or the 10 points, maybe 10 cent. Anyway, the little stores, the little county stores that you would find along the way were one of the highlights because, in this case, it was really hot out. I was really parched, and just being able to stop for some sugary snacks was amazing. I had a real nice sunset as I rode up into the Monsanto Mountains that night, and stayed amongst the juniper trees, which at the time were just absolutely bothering my allergies. So I had a pretty sneezy night sleeping amongst the junipers. But the next day, rode out. You get around the southern tip of the Monsantos, and then there's a long paved stretch that takes you back to Belen. The traditional route would go south of Belen, but I wanted to be able to catch the Roadrunner. So, and I'll talk about that in a second here. I happened to take my drone along on this trip, and so I put it up and got a picture of this just grassland before you get over to, this is again at the southern part of the Monsanto Mountains, kind of the foothills. A few of the miscellaneous pictures. There's my bike next to the Rail Runner. So Belen is the southern terminus, and I was able to hop on that and ride it all the way back up to Santa Fe, and then take the Santa Fe Rail Trail back over to El Dorado where I had left my car, and pick it up. So that was the end of weekend number 1 to do this trip. Again, these stock ponds were full. It was nice to see so much water out there. So this is day 4, and I just want to ask if looks like I'm at 10 minutes right now. Do I have a little more time here, or do you want me to wrap it up?
Why don't you keep going? I'll let you know when we're just a couple more minutes.
Okay. Day number 4. This was a couple weekends later. I had to drive back down to the Kiowa RV park, which is just south of Belen, and that's where I left my car, at this RV park. And this is going to be a day of riding around the Sierra Ladrones, which you can see in the background there. During this day, all you see the Sierra Ladrone in the background the entire time. This bridge is one that you can see from the interstate right south of Belen. So if you ever drive south, you'll keep your eyes out. I'm sure you've seen this bridge. It's pretty cool up close. I'm going to actually skip a little bit here. Let's see, on the way over to Magdalena, you pass through this little ghost town of Riley, which has this really neat school building, which dates back to the early 1900s. And it's a beautiful stone masonry, stonework, and it's still standing and it looks great. It's really fun to see. And right after you go through this little town of Riley, you get to the Rio Salado, which you can also see way downstream at the interstate. You'll drive over the Rio Salado and it looks like just one of these great big dry washes. Well, up here near Riley, it's actually a flowing little creek or river, and in the crossing point, it creates this big mud pit, which creates a lot of issues of trying to get across. It took me an hour just to get through this mud and across this little river portion and get everything cleaned off, which was an adventure. Let's see. And then riding out further. The nice thing about riding on a rainy day or the tail end of a rainy day is that you get great sunsets. And so this is again the Sierra Ladrón. That was one of the last views I got of it. And then I guess I don't have any real pictures of Magdalena where I spent the night. But then the next day, day 5 is a ride up into to Withington Peak. I guess I haven't been pointing out the mileage here, but this is another one of the big days trying to get up to Withington Peak. Almost 5,000 feet of climbing, and Withington Peak tops out at over 10,000 feet. So it was nice and cool and green up there. It looked, like you would expect a New Mexico mountain to look at 10,000 feet. It was green and looked a lot like the Jemez Mountains up there. It was fun to see, and there's a big lookout right on the top there. A few more pictures from throughout this day. There's another one of these murals in Moriarty, a picture from my camp, which was just down below Withington Peak, and the lookout just down in this really lush green canyon. This is riding out across the San Agustin Plains, which is also home to, if you look closely in the back here, the BLA. So you could see that off in the distance, and if you wanted to, you could ride out to get a closer look at it. It was only about 5 miles out there. But I was on a mission to get to the other end of this. I saw this, I guess, horny toad. I'm probably not identifying this properly, but I thought it was cool anyway. And then just a few other random things I saw throughout the day. There's that lookout on the top of Withington Peak, and a few aspens and random vehicles that you see abandoned on the side of the road while you're in the backcountry of New Mexico. Day 6, I really don't have any photos. I was in a hurry. I had to meet my wife, who was driving north and was going to be able to pick me up from Truth or Consequences. So it was a 65-mile ride from, on that last day. A lot of it was on pavement, and I didn't stop to take many pictures, unfortunately. The ride, after you get out of Winston, you climb up over this hill, and there's just this beautiful, beautiful downhill on pavement that stretches out for a long ways, and you see all these plains out to the east of the mountains there, out towards Truth or Consequences, and it's gorgeous. I mean, overall, the ride is just there's so many things to see out there, and it's just so beautiful to see the backcountry of New Mexico. And that's where I'm going to finish my presentation for tonight. You might say, well, I didn't make it all the way to Las Cruces, and that's coming up. I mean, the good thing is that's good winter riding. So in another few weekends here, I'll figure out a time to go down and ride that last chunk from Truth or Consequences down to Las Cruces. So that's all I've got. Any questions, or do we have time for questions? I should ask.
So Nathan, no questions so far in the chat. So I think we'll go to Rod and introducing Brett.
Okay, I'm sure many of you know Brett Kettering. He's a longtime member of the club and a very active member of the club. And I think he retired recently, so he's probably going to be even more active. But he's involved in many activities too. He runs some of the training for the canyoneering trips. He's an avid mountain biker. And as we'll see, he does some mountaineering too. So Brett, let's hear your talk about your and Ron's adventures.
Okay, I think I got myself unmuted now. Can everybody hear me?
Yep, we can hear you, Brett. Go right ahead.
Okay, good, thanks. All right, so I'll just mention also I have used Deirdre's map from the Caja del Rio in both canyoneering and bikepacking. And Nathan is the person who has gotten me interested in bikepacking. So I been doing a little bit of that too. So maybe I'll get out with him a little more in the future. We did a Caja del Rio trip and used Deirdre's map to guide ourselves around. So this summer, Ron and I decided we'd go get some peaks that either neither of us had done or one of us had done. And so we mapped out some plans, and as you're going to see along the way, some weather, unexpected weather got in our way, and we were making plan changes in real time. And as Rod mentioned, I did retire this past summer, and so a little more flexible these days than used to be able to do. So we started out as we were to Wyoming, Montana area, thinking, oh, well, Mount Sherman is a 14er along the way. Neither of us had hiked this. And so we got there, it was a nice day, and we woke up the next morning to a lightly snow-covered tent, got up to the trail head there and started in on the trail. And you can see Ron there as we're approaching a corner to go up a ravine into the saddle before you go to the summit of Mount Sherman. And you're looking back towards the trailhead there. So you can't really tell it here, but it was windy. It was very cold. And we turned this corner and started getting hit by ice pellets in the face, and got up to the saddle at about 13,000 feet and decided we'd had enough. We could come back and do this later. And so we went back down and moved on towards Montana. We did circle back at the end of our trip here, and the picture on your left there is from that saddle where we turned back looking towards the summit of Mount Sherman. And then the other picture is me holding the little rock that they've painted with the Mount Sherman details there, and overlooking Leadville and towards Mount Massive and Elbert and so forth. So we did get back and were able to get that peak in. And you can see the conditions are much nicer here this day. So we looked at the weather after we left Mount Sherman, and we were looking at both Gannett Peak and Square Top, which are along the CDT in Wyoming. And the other one was Granite Peak, and Granite Peak's in southwestern Montana. It's the high point of Montana. And we looked at the weather, and the Wind Rivers looked really bad. So we decided, well, the weather looks better in the Granite Peak area, and we headed for that trail. And you can see we arrived here, and the trailhead, the sign is over here, and I took a picture of the map area, and so we're heading up for Granite Peak, which is right here. And we started down here in the Lady of the Lakes area and near Cook City. So you come in around Cook City, Montana, and you come up to the Lady of the Lake trailhead, and then we backpacked in, and it looked like a great day. It was nice and sunny, really nice backpacking conditions, and we made really good progress. We got high up into the Skytop. This is the Skytop Creek here on your left, and in the center. We got high up into that valley, and things were going well. Clouds started coming in. We thought, well, it's not raining or anything yet. We'll keep going. So we pushed on, and we headed up in there. We had to cross the Skytop Creek here, and got up into the Skytop Creek Valley, which is where you make your hike up the southwest couloir to hit Granite Peak. And over here in the far right, you can't see it at all, but where I'm tracing the mouse, you kind of come up in here and you go up into this couloir here, and way up into the clouds that you can't see right now is Granite Peak. So we spent the night after a little rainstorm on the way in. It snowed on us it started snowing while we were setting up our tents, snowed all night. It was really cold. And we got up and we looked at this and thought, oh, now it's all chock full of snow up this couloir, which is kind of steep and a little treacherous anyway. So we decided it's not the day to go up there. Plus you wouldn't be able to see anything. And Ron and I said, well, what do you think? Shall we wait it out, or shall we just head out and come back another day? And I've been to the top of Granite Peak, and I'm more of a person who likes to get to the peak. Ron's in it for the journey, which is nice trait to have in a partner. And he said, we looked at, I have an InReach Mini, and I got a weather report, and it said it was going to probably be 2 more days of rain and snow. And we decided we just didn't want to sit there for 2 or 3 days and wait for it to clear up. So we decided to come back out, and we did that. So we headed down into Wyoming, and before we got to the Gannett Peak trailhead, we had decided we're not going to do Gannett Peak. There's just been too much snow. It's not going to be a good trip to go there. But in past trips in the area, we've spotted the square top, and we decided we'll just do square top, and that'll take us less time. So we went to Alpine, Wyoming, which I have a cousin who lives there, and her husband. And let me just put in a plug. If you're ever up in that area, they own Moose Gourmet Ice Cream, which is in Jackson, Wyoming, and in Wilson, Wyoming. Really great ice cream shop and treats. And so if you're ever in that area, you can check them out. We stayed at their house for a couple days, dried out all of our gear, and then we headed over to the Green River Lakes trailhead and started in to go to Square Top. And both of these shots are of Square Top. The one on the right is from just after we started in on the trail. You can see it in the distance. And then as we were getting a little closer, the one on the left there shows you what Square Top looks like. And it's off the CDT a little bit to the west. And there's no real trails to it shown on any of the maps. So we had to kind of figure out where we were going. And that's part of our little adventure story here. So when we got over and started up, we couldn't really find a trail. So we decided, well, let's just head straight up the mountain and head for our camp. And I had a waypoint for a lake called Granite Lake, which sits in a little nook between another granite peak and Square Top. And so we just bushwhacked on up the hill, climbed over a lot of trees, and it was exhausting. We were really tired by the time we got up to our camp. And on the way back, we did actually find the trail. So right here that I'm circling, this waypoint is right about where we camped. And we found the trail, which was obvious up there in the camp, and followed it out. So I took this GPS track on the way out, and there is a really nice trail that goes all the way back down to the CDT. So you've got that in the future. If anybody ever wants to do this, let me know. I can give you waypoints and tracks. Here was our camp. We set up and had a nice little spot to camp next to Granite Lake. On the left of Granite Lake this is Square Top, and you're looking back north towards the trailhead, which is the Green River Lakes trailhead. And the next morning, off to your left here, you can kind of see the lower parts of a scree field. And it turns out that, again, there was no trail markings for how you make your way up onto this flat mesa, which is basically the top of Square Top. And it's quite large. And so we didn't really know how to get there. So we explored around a little bit and decided on a route. And we did make it, but we came by a circuitous route, which I'll show you in the next slide, some hand drawings of the tracks that we took. But on the left, you can kind of see you're looking down a gully that we went up, followed a creek up here, turned into this gully, and then just found our way from shelf to shelf. And Ron is a better climber than I am. And there were a couple spots that were a little bit hairy. And fortunately, we had the makings for some quick make harnesses with some beaners and webbing, and had a 6mm cord, and he belayed me up in a couple places, which was very nice of him, and I appreciate that. We did ultimately make it to the summit, and Ron's sitting there on the summit there in the middle picture, and in the background you can see the 2 Green River lakes, and at the end of the northmost lake is where the trailhead is that we came in on. And just when we got up on top of the mesa of Square Top, we took a break and had some lunch, and I sat here for Ron to take this picture. And this mountain right here is Gannett Peak, and it's about 11 miles as the crow flies from where we're sitting here. And you can't really see, but we had been up there before and there was much less snow, but there's a little passageway that kind of climbs this little white spot that you can see right here is called Minor Glacier, and it's actually quite a large glacier. You go up around the edge of that glacier, and then you traverse back into this little nook, and then up onto the peak. And that was all full of snow that you could see, that we could see with our eyes from this point. So we were glad we didn't do that, because it's quite steep and a high consequence of failure or accident there. And so we were happy to put that off to another time. But we did make the summit of Square Top, and it was a pretty place and nice views. And we followed this orange track. So we kind of started up the scree field, and then we traversed over into this stream valley here, up into this little canyon, and made our way up through the benches and onto the flat part about right there, and traversed over the flat and up over to Square Top. And on the way back down, we actually found a cairn trail that we could follow out that just dropped into this ravine, and then traversed over on some benches, and then down the scree field right back to our camp. So it would have been a much quicker trip, but not nearly as adventurous. And so that we had a lot of fun and made it safely. And thanks to Ron for getting me past the spooky spots. And I think that is the last of my slides. Yep, that's it.
All right, thank you, Brett. So still the chat is being very quiet tonight. And so if anyone has questions, please do go ahead and put those in the chat. I apologize, Clarissa. Let me get you co-host so you can start sharing your screen. And Rod, if you would like to introduce Clarissa for us.
Yeah, and I just wanted to comment about Brett's talk. It was kind of refreshing to see you talk about somebody exercising good judgment. So thanks for that, Brett. Clarissa is somebody I only recently met at the December board meeting of the club. She's new to the board. She's secretary, as Melanie pointed out at the beginning of the meeting. And I thought giving a little talk here at the Potpourri would be a great way to introduce her to the club. So welcome to the board, Clarissa. And I'm looking forward to hearing your talk about the Channel Islands.
Yeah, thank you, Rod. Yep, so this is a trip my husband and I actually took back in July of 2018 to scuba dive and hike in Channel Islands National Park. I admit it was attached to a conference because that is how I do a lot of sightseeing. And we even have a name for it. We normally call it conference tourism. So I hope everybody does the same thing when they go out to a conference. So what you're seeing here is a view from the scuba diving boat. So there's the wake from the boat, and this is the end of Anacapa Island, where they have this beautiful little sea arch, which we only got to see at a distance. The boat didn't take us over there near it, but this is a really interesting little area. So we don't often talk about scuba diving, but it's something that I've really enjoyed and I got into in 2018. Our friends were planning a trip to Australia, and my husband and I thought, you know, if we're going to go to the Great Barrier Reef, we're going to scuba dive. So believe it or not, you can get scuba certified in New Mexico. There are a couple outfitters in Albuquerque where you can get your certifications. It includes a pool weekend in Albuquerque and then this open water weekend at the Blue Hole. The Blue Hole is a really interesting spring in Santa Rosa, New Mexico. It is cold because it is a spring. It's 61 degrees year round. This is actually the coldest you can have the water be and get an open water certification. So 60 degrees is the lowest that you can do before you have to start getting different gear, a dry suit. And this pool is actually 81 feet deep. An open water certification allows you to go down to 60 feet. So this is a really great place to do both an open water and an advanced open water if that's your jam. I have a picture here of the Blue Hole, very calm at night. You can see the 2 scuba platforms that they have in the water. The squares that you can see are the safety stop distances. So those are about 15 feet down. And a safety stop is just so you can decompress and get some nitrogen out of your system from being at depth and breathing the tank air. And you do that for about 3 minutes until you can surface if you're doing an open water dive. Advanced open water is different. The weekend we went, there were people, lots of groups there from Colorado and New Mexico. There's no place in Colorado where you can get an open water scuba certification. So that's why they come down to the Blue Hole. But the visibility was definitely not this nice. It was about 10 to 15 feet, which is not very much. We could barely see the instructor sometimes that was taking us underwater to do our different skills. And we got told, if you can dive here, you can dive anywhere. So, that gives you a little bit of confidence as you move forward. Like I said, I had a conference coming up. We decided, there's scuba diving at Channel Islands. We'll go visit and do scuba diving and some hiking. So Channel Islands National Park is a set of islands off the coast of California near Los Angeles. You obviously, get there by boat. So the park headquarters are in Ventura. So you load onto the boat there, and then it's a 45-minute to 1 hour boat ride. On this boat ride, you can see tons of wildlife, dolphins, seals, whales. I actually follow the company, the One Boat Company, on Facebook, and they always have like humpback whale sightings and really cool things like that. We didn't see any on our journey, but that's okay. So you can see Anacapa Island, which I've mentioned a couple of times, is the closest to the shore. We did scuba diving there in both the State Marine Reserve and the State Marine Conservation Area. And then we went hiking on Santa Cruz Island the next day in this little section where the star is, and I'll have a little map insert there. And then I just have a nice little buoy and some sea lions sleeping and sunbathing over there in the corner. Like I said, we got certified in the Blue Hole, and this was our first saltwater dive. This was not much warmer, 64 degrees at the bottom. Actually, and hilariously, on the boat on the way home, we also got told, if you can dive here, you can dive anywhere. So, 2 for 2, I guess, on hard dives. So you can see here, this is scuba diving in a kelp forest. The kelp grows fairly close to shore, so we're not very deep here. It was 25 to 35 feet deep at any given point. This also, since you're so close to shore, you have a lot of swells. So this is where the ocean is, hitting off the rocks, and you're sort of being moved back and forth up to like 3 to 4 feet. So you're not swimming, but your body is moving back and forth with these swells. So it was actually kind of challenging for a first saltwater dive. And I showed this picture of me giving a thumbs up. If you're a scuba diver, you'll know that actually means we're going to the surface, not everything's okay. But this was my first dive, and we were still working on hand signals. So you have your mask and regulator, a second regulator for safety. Down here at the bottom, we check your pressure gauge of the air left in your tank. On my wrist, I have my dive watch, which gives me the depth that I'm at and then the time that I'm at. It actually helps with safety stops as you're coming back up. And then for additional safety, this bright orange thing is called a safety sausage. If you come up and you're nowhere close to the boat, you can actually unroll this and blow it up. And then it's a big marker in the water for a boat or another boat to find you so that you don't get lost in the ocean. So there is a lot of safety involved with scuba diving. So here's another view of a different kelp forest. So the other stuff was a little bit younger. This looks a little bit older with lots of fish. The kelp forests there grow 1.5 feet per day. They really, really grow fast. They have a host of animals that live in and around them. It's really an ecosystem unto itself. I have a picture of, I think it's a sheephead fish with a little bit of orange and black there. And then hopefully you can see this little spiny lobster here. In the conservation areas, the lobsters can get very, very large because you're not allowed to fish or hunt in those areas. And so the lobsters really, really like those areas. Then also in this space, we were able to swim with the state marine fish of California, which is the Garibaldi. It is this beautiful bright orange fish, just totally orange, and they were there in plenty as we were swimming around. So we got a couple of really good shots of these guys. Then the main attraction, the sea lions. I don't think I totally knew this was an attraction when I booked the scuba diving trip, but this was by far like the coolest part. This was on our last dive as we were coming back to the boat. Over here in the corner, you can actually see this is where we were tethered. And the sea lions, they hear the boat, they come over. We were told they kind of act like dogs a little bit. So they want to play with you in the water. So the insert in the middle is one of them sort of turning over in the water and playing around near the scuba divers. And then the two that swam by us at speed and then went straight up to the surface. We were warned before we got in the water with these guys. They kind of are like dogs. They want your attention. They kind of want you to play with them, but they can be sneaky and steal your gear if it's not tied onto you well enough. And don't follow them because they will swim you right into a current, and then you'll really need to use that safety sausage as you drift further away from the boat. But this was really, really cool to be underwater and see how graceful and fast and agile they were. So that was just a really, really cool aspect of the trip. And I do have some videos, but I know videos don't work that well on the Zoom. So if you want to see them and you catch me, I probably can show you on my phone sometime. So that was great. We headed back to shore, got on a different boat the next day and went back out to Santa Cruz Island. So because you're on a boat, there's boat timing. So we only had a certain amount of time. So I planned this hike for my husband and I so we could see some stuff. So in this lower right-hand side insert, the boat docks over here on the right-hand side, and we sort of walked up through the center of the island. The picture that I show here is this center trail more in the middle. There's some nice rolling hills. We definitely were there during the dry season. I've seen other pictures in the springtime. There are beautiful wildflowers and stuff all over the hillsides. But like I said, conference tourism doesn't often lead to being places the best time of the year, but they are still amazing places to go see. Then we continued along the trail out here and we ate overlooking this cove, and then we hiked back along the shore back to the boat. And that hike was about 4.5 miles and 300 feet of elevation change. So it was kind of a nice leisurely walk. But scuba diving wears you out, so that wasn't such a bad thing. The island fox shown here, scrounging under a picnic table, don't feed the animals. He is one of the largest mammals on any of the islands. The foxes actually are descendants of the gray fox from the shore, but they live only on 6 out of 8 of the islands, and on each individual island, the foxes are endemic, so they're their own subspecies. So the foxes on one island and the foxes on another island are actually their own subspecies. So island flora and fauna are always interesting like that. But yeah, he's scrounging, and I'm surprised he let us get it was a little close. So we left him be and headed on our hike. So most of the hike was along the shoreline. You can see here, these are the kelp forests, this darker brown part in the ocean. So you can see the kelp forest that we scuba dove in. We're actually pretty close to the shore. This day looked a little bit calmer than the day we went scuba diving. You can see maybe down here, there are people kayaking. There was a lot of kayaking around these islands. There's actually a painted cave as one of the highlights that we didn't get to, but those are kayak trips that you can take. Most of what we did was hiking on Santa Cruz. You can also backpack. There's another boating dock further down that you would take, and then you backpack back to the boat dock that we ended up getting off and on at. So I think one more nice shore picture. You can see the other islands in the background. Again, kelp forests, the beautiful rock colors, not much green, but maybe I'll go back someday when it's a little bit better season. And with that, I think my presentation's done. So.
All right, thank you so much, Clarissa.
Sure.
Just one question came in about these cliffs that you're showing. Are they volcanic? Is it some deposit? That just looks
I knew it.
so crazy.
I think you guys must have started as a geology club, because it has not been lost on me that most people talk about the geology of the landscape. I didn't feel like I had that much time to talk about it in 10 minutes, so I did not look it up. So I'm sorry, I don't have the answer.
No worries, no worries.
Sure.
Okay, so I'm gonna work on getting the rest of our presenters back as co-hosts so they can unmute themselves. First, we did have a question come in for Deirdre. Actually, a couple people were asking about your Caja del Rio map, and where they can get it. I know that the Peak gift shop at the Nature Center used to stock it, but I checked and it's out of stock.
Yeah, you can contact Colleen Ollinger in town. She used to own Ottawa Crossing Book Station, and she's my publisher and distributor. Other places you can get it are in Santa Fe at the BLM offices off of County Road 14, and the Travel Bug in downtown Santa Fe has copies as well. So yeah, a couple of different places, but just if you want more maps, please get in touch with Colleen or send me an email and I'll contact Colleen. And the Caja del Rio map just shows hiking, biking, riding trails. It's a beautiful area that is being grazed, and we just have a great relationship with the grazing folks. So it's a very welcoming place, and lots of different people use it for getting away and breathing some fresh air.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we had one note from Melanie. I'm going to throw it into the chat right now, and it's just about Mountaineers membership renewals coming due. And I'm getting a couple questions coming in. Okay, Clarissa looked it up. Predominantly volcanic in origin, composed mainly of highly weathered Miocene volcanic rock eroded by wind and waves. Yeah, I guess that explains the really weird overhanging stuff there. Cliffs. Okay, and yeah, so I know that was a whirlwind of talks tonight, and just a couple people chatting in. Thank you everyone for for presenting. Thank you to all of our presenters, and thanks to everybody that showed up. I know it's not the usual festive December meeting, but hopefully we'll get back to that soon.